What if you could live your life judgment-free? Are you ready to live the unapologetic, confident life God designed for you? Then this is the place to be. Welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. It's time to break free of physical, spiritual, and heart-centered challenges that have held you back for way too long. Listen in for fun and powerful tips and tools to help you break free today. Hear from our leading experts, along with me, Annie Berryhill, your host and personal guide to freedom. Now it's time to live like no one's judging. Let's go. Hey there, everybody. This is Annie Berryhill, and welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. I am thrilled today to introduce you to a first ever type of episode that we are going to be sharing with you today. And that is because I have my friend Beau Henderson on the show. That's right. You heard it. It's a guy. We are having a guy, a very smart and special and caring guy on our show for the very first time. So I'm very, very thrilled to have Beau Henderson with us today. And I want to tell you a little bit about Beau's story and his background before we jump into the conversation. So thank you so much for being here today. So Beau had an experience, a heartbreaking experience where he lost his father suddenly when he was in college. But the silver lining he found was that he realized he could make a profound difference in someone else's life by helping them to navigate important financial decisions. His interest in psychology, coupled with his fascination with financial matters, led him to a career he loves in financial planning and coaching. Now, 15 years later, he has never stopped learning and growing through his work. Beau is also the author of 4 best-selling books, and he holds a degree in psychology from the University of Georgia, as well as designations of Retirement Income Certified Planner, National Social Security Advisor, Certified Long-Term Care, Master Certified Success Coach, and Certified Master Behavioral Analysis. Certified Master Behavior Analyst, in addition to his role as CEO of Rich Life Advisors. That is a lot, Beau. You are a very accomplished man, and welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. You feeling sassy today?
I'm feeling very sassy, but let me tell you, I'm excited to this groundbreaking show. You've invited a guy kind of to see behind the curtain and break through. And you know what's fascinating, Annie, to me about us taking it there and going there is, you brought it up. I talk a lot about money, but we might surprise some people because I'm not here to show you pictures of Ferraris and jets and things like that. We're going to talk about it a little bit differently than I believe people have heard. And also along those lines, there's certain conversations that I've found over the last 16 years that men have around money that they need to have and things they need to deal with, and women and couples. So maybe some of that will integrate into what we talk about today.
Awesome. I think one of the things that I'm very conscientious about providing on this show, and I mentioned this to you before we started, is the fact that we all have hurdles in every area of our life. There's something that stops us. And a huge part of that is recognizing that that's a problem. So today, really what I want to tackle is the fact that money is a hindrance for moving forward, for progressing, for getting what you want out of your life. And some of the ways that we get stuck, and some of the ways that you've taught and learned yourself about how getting around those is possible, and living that full, rich life, as you talk about in your books and your show as well. So let's jump in with that. How would you define what is a rich life? Because that's can be a little nebulous and defined differently, but how do you define living a rich life?
The rich life idea and the philosophy came around in that what I thought a rich life was, well into my early 30s, was what the world sells us, right? It's the marketing, it's the branding, it's the stuff you have. That's your worth, that's your power, that's who you are and what you are. But what happened, the longer I worked with clients, and I was working at that age with much older clients, I was learning that, wait, something doesn't add up. From what I was taught and what I was buying into, people were talking about their wealth and what made their lives rich and what they wouldn't trade all their money in the world for, being a lot of things besides just cash in the bank. Not that that's bad, and I want to make that clear. I hope everybody listening has $10 million in the bank if they want to, or more. But if we don't do it in the context of things that create true wealth, such as the things I were hearing from these older clients were things like, hey, the memories I've made over the years, I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. My physical health, right? You know, if it's gone, I would trade everything for it because I can't spend my money if I'm not healthy. Right. The relationships, all those things, if we don't use our money in somewhat of a strategy or a plan to grow and be fulfilled in the journey, I think sometimes we get lost, Annie, in this looking for this arrival syndrome. If I arrive at this destination or I get to this place, then I'm going to be happy and everything's just going to come together. But it's just not true.
It's not true. And I've just known through my life of now being in our 50s and actually looking at retirement on the not so distant horizon is staggering to me. It happens. So if you're in your 30s listening to this, trust me, you're going to get there. God willing, you're going to live that long and you're going to get there. And it is wise and prudent to start thinking about it now. But at the same time, you can't just live to work, because that's an unfulfilled life. That's not a rich life at all. And really striking the balance, finding that place in the middle where it's not all or nothing on either end, and finding that middle. And I'm so glad that you're here and this is what you do, is to help to people to really find that sweet spot where you can have it all.
That's right. You can have it all, I believe, because I think there's some mindsets, you'll hear it when you're talking with people, especially in the context of coaching conversations. There's almost this justification where I'm going to be happy and fulfilled, so money's not important to me. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to do the hustle, and it's all about money. And you're kind of missing that middle part we're talking about, to where you can have both. And honestly, the people that are truly successful probably do have both to some extent.
I agree. You know, we could potentially grow up with whacked out views of money. Money doesn't grow on trees, you know, all these things that kind of play in your head. And I just got off the phone with someone in my family who's younger than me. And we had a very important conversation about the difference between, you know, he's somewhat unsatisfied in his job, and he actually knows what he wants to do, but he knows in the job he can make more money, but in the other thing, he's going to find more satisfaction. He already knows it because he's worked in that field a little bit and he's real familiar with that. And, you know, I said to him, I used to be of the complete mindset of do what you love and the money will come. That's not always true. Right. I had a really wise friend who I didn't really want to listen to for a while because I was really sold on that do what you love and the money will come. You'll be rich and it'll just all pay off. She said, I look at it like I have a job that pays me really well so that I can afford to do the things that I love to do when I'm not at work. I really had to shift my mindset a little bit to say, ooh, that's a possibility too. And both of those work. But not always, you know, either way, you can still have gray area. So,
and you know, that's a funny example because people see my take on financial planning and they say, oh, that's really neat. That's cool. You kind of came up with your own definition and started, but what they don't realize behind the scenes is I had to do traditional financial planning for a decade to pay my dues to learn the business. And then I was able and had the experience and had the foundation to be able to start crafting the version of that I love and that's fulfilling to me. So you're absolutely right.
Well, and that's intriguing right there, because I'm sure somebody listening, just like when I was listening to you just now, where you said I have my own brand because I had to learn it the traditional way, and I've modified that and adapted it to my knowledge and what I'm passionate about. So tell us a little bit about how the way you go about things is different than the traditional way that you learned.
Sure. In traditional, when it comes to finances, it was traditionally what I found, and I worked in every different aspect, from a bank to a broker dealer to an insurance company. So I saw all sides of it, and I found it was very product driven, meaning here's the product my company sells. Go make that fit a client's need. Go make that fit a client's situation. And the longer I was in those models, which you don't have much choice when you're starting, I saw conflicts of interest. And I had a couple of occasions I had a manager tell me, when I knew something was better for a client, tell me, well, who writes your paycheck, so to speak. And that was when I started transitioning out of that model. Mm-hmm. But it was very product focused. And what really shifted for me with the Rich Life branding of financial advising, or the Rich Life advising, is I realized if I can get crystal clear on what's really exciting for you, what lights you up, when we're talking about it, you start talking fast, you know, again, then if we can go back and use your money and start creating a strategy with your money to move towards that lights you up, one, you're much more likely to be excited about it and stick to it. But two, you hear me excited about it. You're moving towards this life that's fulfilling and meaningful to you, not chasing these things, those arrival things down the road that you may never get to, honestly. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. People waiting for this destination at 55, 62 down the road, and somebody gets sick and they can't do the things they had saved and waited for. So I think that's really the biggest difference is let's focus on a life plan and then integrate a financial plan in the context of that life plan, because and I know you'll resonate with this from our conversations, Annie, is I see so many people just sleepwalking through life in their roles as a mother, a student, an employee. And if you're not careful, life will miss you. Exactly.
It'll sneak on by and you'll look back and say, holy cow, how did I get here? Well, you're busy, and of course life, especially I think when you have children, Beau, when you have children, you'll see how time seems to go by faster than you ever imagined and slower than you could ever think or dream. Oh, lots of different ways time will trick you. Beau's going to have a baby when's the baby due?
3 months.
3 months. November 10th. So by the time you're listening to this, there's a good chance that baby will have made her arrival. Right? So about to change for Beau. But, the point is that we can so easily just get in the motion of one foot in front of the other and just going through the motions of living life and not finding those sparkle things, those things that get you excited. And I know for a long time I avoided a lot of financial planning because they were trying to put me in cookie cutters. And we worked with someone who was very much a product of the company that she worked for. And I knew it, and I could sense that she was trying to sell us things that were really beneficial for her. Right. And on paper looked like they had this huge upside. But when I would take those products other places and have neutral eyes look at them, people who weren't out for my business, they would be like, it's all good for them, but not so good for you. And so it's scary when you're a person like me where I'm smart enough to do it, but I don't get into all those details. I don't have the time or the patience to learn every vehicle out there. And so I can't protect myself because I don't have the knowledge. But when someone works with you about your plan and what you're excited and how you want to live and when you want to retire and what your life's going to look like, then you're right. You absolutely can be focused on the steps you need to take now to make that later a reality and have the confidence that things are set in place. So you're not as, I hope this works. It's working because you already set it up to work.
Right. And, one of the things that I think it's a good message, and it's something that I'm passionate about, an advocate for getting out this word to the world, is that let's take responsibility to avoid that person that takes advantage of us because we don't know any better. Right. There's some issues with there's not education in schools for finances which needs to change and all those things, but it's still our responsibility. So if we can raise our financial IQ, and that's a lot of what we work on too with strategy and things, is okay, let's go through some exercises to learn what our income gap is, to learn what we need to be saving today to be where we want to be in 20 years, learn how much insurance we need to accomplish what we need. But you can figure out those things so that by the time you're talking to somebody about a product, you know what you need. You don't have somebody selling it to you telling you what you need, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's make it a priority to raise your financial IQ. And for some people, that doesn't sound very fun, but it never fails that with the clarity and with knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's a tremendous sense of empowerment and relief when you actually do it. And you're like, why did I not do that decades ago?
Right. It's all scary and intimidating in some senses because you kind of feel like if you make a mistake, everything that you've worked for up until that point could be potentially lost. And right. So, the stock market is risky. Mutual funds, they're risky. They all have that level of volatility. And then the super safe things, you're kind of bummed out because you're like, wow, I made $200 on that and I put all that money away. Like that just doesn't seem right, and it's difficult to, like I said before, there's just no way to know every possible thing. But again, clarity goes a long way in terms of what you want. And then working with someone who works like you do, that works on a case-by-case basis and makes it fit for your particular goals and timeline and income and gaps and all of those things. So I think that's tremendously important. But one of the things that you and I share a lot of passion about is this overlap between the financial fitness and being healthy and having healthy finances and having a healthy body. Now, how did you come to really value that in your life? Because you have a very specific niche, but tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, as part of that idea of, I just saw over the years, is I saw so many times when people lost their health, they couldn't enjoy their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Or if people lost their health, they lost the ability in some cases to accumulate wealth. And they're very integrated to the extent that, same thing, if we're struggling financially, the stress that can come along with that can tank our health. So I just see this very circular connection between, if we can be healthy in both areas, we can probably support both areas. And not only are they related, I think they're perfect analogies, meaning if I need to start a health routine from wherever I am, just kind of hoping things work out all right, or a financial routine, it's almost the same process and the same steps that we would go through to help come up with a plan and some action items to start moving in the right direction.
Well, you need to know where you want to go and then work
Mm-hmm.
backwards. It's that start with the end in mind, kind of Stephen Covey mindset. Start with the end in mind and work backwards to put the steps together to ensure that you actually arrive at that destination. So that's really such a nice overlap, because in my world as a nutrition person and a fitness person, we always start with, where do you want to be? Why do you want to be there? What have you tried? What has worked? What hasn't worked? What's your family history? All that. Think about how much that that factors into the financial discussion as well. What's your family history with money? What were your parents' financial health like? How did they spend their money? What did they tell you about money? All of those things, there's so many ways. So let's get into a little bit about some brass tacks here as far as making a plan. Like, what do you typically do with people just a really basic thing? Because again, my goal in this show is always to point out the hurdles and the issues and the challenges, but not leave people hanging and say, yeah, I knew that, but actually give them some tools. The very, very basic stuff, the simple things that people can start doing now. Like, what would your top 3 be?
I have one, and this is a promise I make. This will put you in the top 5% of financial literacy. It's not a hard exercise. It's just one that gets put off a lot. And I'll actually, if you want this PDF, you can put it on our show notes.
Perfect.
So we did a little bit of a survey, and we had there was a year when we actually stopped 100 people, and we asked them a set of questions. And what I found is only 5 out of 20, or 1 out of 5, so 5%. Yeah, 1 out of 20. So 5%, only 5% of people actually knew what was coming in, what was going out, they actually knew their numbers, right?
Okay.
So one of the things that the first places we start, you talked about the importance of being clear of where you're going, because if we don't know where we're going, we're just kind of doing a bunch of activity, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the things I found on the other end is let's get really clear on where we are right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And just a couple of basic documents, and they're not hard to do. It's just doing them, but they create tremendous clarity. And one of them is an income statement and expenses, just getting a clear picture of what your expenses are. Mm-hmm. It blows my mind how many people are off $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 of what they think they're spending and what they're actually spending. That's not good or bad. It's just what it is. So. Mm-hmm. A good list of expenses, a good list of assets and liabilities, what you own and what you owe. And the third document is typically just a list of debts. So that if we're carrying debt, we can look at it and find a path to pay off the debt. So it's really those 3 financial statements where if we can get to a place to make a commitment to know our numbers, then one, it's a relief. It might not be exactly where we want to be, but it's like, I know where I am. Now I can come up with a plan to get healthier, just like our health, right?
Exactly.
So that's the biggest thing is if you would do those 3 statements, an income statement, a balance sheet, and a list of debts, and just have a clear snapshot of where you are right now, that will literally put you ahead of 95% of your peers out there.
That is brilliant. And of course, I would say of very many of the people that are listening right now probably already knew that. Mm-hmm. But again, it's not about what you know, it's what you apply.
Right.
Action beats inspiration, motivation all the time. it's the same thing when you're talking about health or nutrition specifically. We start out with having an inventory of what you're doing, how much you're eating. I always ask people for a food journal.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what you're asking for. You're asking for a financial journal. Let's
Right.
take a snapshot of what's going in and what's going out. Of course, with nutrition, that's kind of a funny question, but it does apply from time to time. But it's very, very important because you can't adjust what you can't put down into hard numbers.
Right.
You can't change those things. But there is that correlation of like knowing where you are in order to be able to move forward. So I like that. What comes up for me when you say that is how many times I knew I had to do that, but because I'm the financial person in our family, I pay the bills, I watch the money, I see things going in and out, because my husband would fall into that 95% that doesn't know because he just trusts me to do it. It's just my default job. But there's been so many times where I've had to do that. And like you said, it's very empowering to understand where you are. You don't always like what it looks like, but it is empowering to face that big, scary beast and know, okay, all right, now I know what I'm dealing with exactly, and I can make the appropriate moves to get out of it if that's the situation or to make it better. So I like it. It's good.
And you know what most people in this country, their financial plan is to not think about it and hope everything turns out okay. and it's just not, it really is the plan for a lot of people. And it's just not a great plan because it puts us in a position, same thing with health. We just keep making these connections. It puts us in a position by the time we're dealing with it, we're reactive. Right.
Exactly.
And there's a lot that we've lost a lot of options. We lost a lot of flexibility, and we're doing damage control versus proactively building the life we want to create.
The picture that I see when you said that was a person who is in the water and they're starting to drown,
mm-hmm.
and their arms and legs are flailing. They are not swimming efficiently. They're not moving. They are losing the battle. They are slowly drowning. They're slowly sinking. And we ignore things for long enough and we are going to be put in that reactive and save our own skin. And then we make horrible decisions. We spend thousands of dollars for a pill or a shake that is going to make the difference. And it's really not, because the difference is already things that you have to change in yourself, your habits, what you're focused on, things that we talked about already. So yeah, it's crazy how much overlap and correlation there is between what do we call fiscal and physical health.
Well, I got another one that as you're talking is making me think, Annie, is this idea of we talked about, so with money, and you're going to laugh, I think, because of the correlation here too. With money, oftentimes when somebody comes to me with a money problem or a money issue or a money concern, it's almost always a symptom of something else going on. Right?
Bingo.
It always ties back to either a belief,
mm-hmm.
and you brought this up a little bit, a belief that might go back to when you're 5-6 years old, that you push money away and don't know it, or you blow money and you don't understand why. A pattern, you see yourself getting money, losing money, you could see it with relationships. You could see it with your health, gaining weight, losing weight, same thing. So those are the kinds of things that where I see financial planning done wrong is it's when we only look at the spreadsheet and we only look at the numbers, we don't first have those conversations. And it's conversations good to have with ourselves and good to have with partners if we have partners, is what is it that I grew up learning about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it my mom said, my grandparents said? How has that affected me today? What are some of the mistakes I made about money to date? And how does that affect what I do today? And really start pulling that apart to see, are you doing things and reacting today in ways that might have helped you survive an event or a situation in the past that's now just continually putting you in the cycle of sabotage?
Mm-hmm. It's dead on. It's just the human experience. We do that all the time. We learn things wrong by people who modeled things based on the lack of information they got. Mm-hmm. It's this perpetual generational sort of thing. And you can see that in a lot of families, the families that are really wealthy, the Rockefellers, all those people, they have a foundation of belief of what money is and what money can do that they perpetuate in their families. And it also goes the other direction. Again, we can flip that over and look at health. The family that sits around drinking, Cokes all day long, sweet tea. I'm going to put that in there because I'm sitting in the South with a Georgia boy right now.
That's right.
And, having those habits, one person steps off of that treadmill of the family. They go away to college, and they have a roommate who's super healthy. And all of a sudden they're learning all this new stuff. They go back to the family. they're like, who are you? Come, go back to the way you've always been. This is how we do it in our family. Good, bad, or indifferent. This is how we do it in our family. And they try to drag you back down into it. And that's how it gets perpetuated and so rote and so patterned in our own thinking that we don't even know what we don't know. And it's that moment. And I remember I'm in the certification right now, just finishing it up. And one of the things they said, and I've said it on the show before, like, you can't go back to being unaware. The moment you're aware, everything can be different. You can't put it back. And what you do with it at the moment of awareness is really up to you. And it's going to make or break whether or not that continues to be a habit or a pattern or not.
One of the places I've seen this so prevalent is we would go into middle and high schools and do basic financial literacy classes through an organization called Junior Achievement. And it was heartbreaking to see kids that were in those cycles, and they just couldn't see themselves successful. They couldn't see anything other than what they knew. They couldn't see, maybe it might be like a welfare situation or something very sad. And something came up in those conversations over the last couple of years, and I think it's relevant for all of us, is that we could all either be, we see the cycle, and I think a lot of times it's an excuse, or it's just, that's just what I know. And I think we can either be a cycle keeper or we can choose to be a cycle breaker. And I think that's where the real opportunity is. And that applies across all these areas we're covering.
Exactly. And one of the things that I thought of too, as you were talking about, I don't know, how old were the kids that you were talking to in the Junior Achievement Program?
Middle and high school, both. Okay,
middle and high school. Younger kids like that, from being in psychology as your major, how our identity is formed and how we don't, until we're 8, we kind of don't even have our own identity. So we can't imagine ourselves outside what our parents created for us. It's like we don't think for ourselves. We don't even have the capacity to do that. That's not how our brains work. But as we get older, and I think that's a great age, especially the high school and early college, the young adult age, where they have hopefully stepped away a little bit to start to form really their own values and individuality from their family, where now you can influence them with new information that may be contrary to their family's pattern, and help them to grow the financial literacy, that health literacy, that kind of thing, to break those cycles, be the cycle breaker.
And just show them, and just not just tell them, but show them. We would do an exercise where we say, okay, who spends $5 a day buying snacks on the way to and from school? Almost every kid there raised their hand. And then you show them $150, $5 a day, $150 a month. By the time you retire, you would have almost $1 million saved. And you would see a few kids in every group, you'd see a light bulb go off and be like, oh, wow, that could be possible for me. And you could tell they probably never thought that before that time. So that's one of the things. And one of the problems I see is I think parents don't teach their kids about money because they weren't taught, and there's a little bit of a shame around it, so it doesn't get talked about. It's like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You just don't talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the one of the things I found is that there's that cycle is perpetuated because the generation that didn't learn can't teach this generation. So I think, again, I think the answer is education, getting it out there, getting tools, not just for kids to learn, but also a way for parents to save face and learn about money too.
Mm-hmm. And if parents are open, I will say that a large majority of people that are my friends that are parents will often refer to their kids as their best little teachers. So you just have to be a little bit open as a parent to start to see when your child is learning things, when they're going to high school and they're learning some things that maybe you didn't learn because maybe you didn't finish high school, or maybe your kids are in college or pursuing advanced degrees. And I look at my kids now and they're in their 20s and they've had life experiences that I will never have. And they've done things and learned things that I never have, that I find myself just mesmerized by this new information and what they know. And I think to myself, this is fantastic. They're expanding my mind to be able to do that. And so it's kind of like this sneaky way of, like you said, allowing the parents to continue to learn, but circumventing the shame. Because the child is the vehicle. They're excited. Mom, did you know that if I didn't spend $5 a day, by the time I retire, I could have $1 million? And their parents are like, oh, wow. Wish I would have known that, A, but B, let's do that for you. How do we make this happen? And it's really brilliant in its simplicity.
Right.
It just makes me excited and sad because who's going to cover all that ground?
It's a problem for sure. And that's, and I almost, it's funny we're talking about this because one of the projects that I was working on with the publisher was actually creating a book that worked with, it was for parents to teach their kids about money, but really it was for them to learn together.
Exactly. Oh, I love
Same
it.
kind of thing.
It's brilliant because you can simplify it to the point of a child or a younger adult, early, almost an adult, that you may be high schoolish, before they have a job. I think that's a great time. Right. Before they start earning their own money. I thought it was really important to iron my dollar bills from when I was babysitting. Didn't make me have any more. It didn't multiply them, but it sure looked nice.
They were crisp.
I liked the crispy ones. I don't know. They felt new and so much potential. But that's a fabulous idea because again, it's circumventing that shame. And I refer a lot to the Maslow's hierarchy. And at the very base of that is security and safety. And part of shame is feeling unsafe, feeling not knowledgeable enough, feeling embarrassed and ashamed. There's missing security in that. And for a child to bring home a book like that, or got it at the book fair, or a parent to say, I'm going to teach my kid, and all of a sudden their light bulbs are going on. It's a wonderful way to infiltrate both of their minds and teach them and grow them more together. And then they can be on the same page and really reinforce it.
And then again, that whole concept of breaking the cycle, that's what gets really exciting to me. If we have generation, oh, wait, I'm going to do something different for my kids.
Exactly. And that is true in so many circumstances, whether we're talking about finances or health or ways of interacting with each other. There's dynamics between parents and child that have been the same for generations, and they don't necessarily do anything good for the long-term relationship or the person's well-being, but yet the default sort of operating system going on. And so we get a lot of that. You come from a violent home, you tend to be more violent, right? Violence is normal to you. There's no line. You grow up with a parent that's a bully. You either, there's only a couple ways. People are patterns. There's only a couple ways that you're going to go when you're the person being bullied. You're going to fight back. You're going to retreat. You're going to be a bully yourself, And so breaking those cycles, all of those cycles is really important. But I think in order to make that happen, we all need to sort of find a lane and stick with it and dive in deep.
Right. And you're right. We're going to model what we see and what we know. So I do think why as adults that maybe we're not these kids, or maybe we're the parents, I think we can step up and say, you know what? Like, I'm going to raise my financial IQ. I'm going to raise my health IQ. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do that because I want to have a positive impact in my life, because I know it'll make everybody around me better. But again, I can pay that forward too in one way or another.
So how do you think that people who are stuck in sort of generational ways of doing things, how do you infiltrate that? I mean, you've brought up, the junior achievement, talking to kids at school, and the potential of the book, but it takes a big person, because it's admitting that they've not been doing it right. And for a lot of people, that's very, even though they know everything is going to hell in a handbasket, financially or physically, it's very hard to admit that you didn't have all the answers, that you didn't do it correctly. And some people make that sort of their end. Well, I didn't do it. It's too late for me. Is it too late?
Well, there's a trick there. And you brought up a great point in that a lot of the people that need that basic information, the financial foundational pieces, aren't getting it because the models of financial education, for the most part, or financial planning, they're not looking for people. They're looking for people with money, and they're not getting paid to help. So that's why I think the key, and a lot of times when I actually address somebody, it might be catching a kid. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's when somebody's in crisis. Things are so bad, they're saying, hey, I give up. I know I got to do something now. And they're looking for help. And then there's a little bit of a taller mountain to climb to get back to a good place. But that's why I think the deal is not any kind of products, or I think it's education. I think it's getting education out in a way that people aren't scared they're being taken advantage of, or being sold something per se, but empowering people to be, that's one of my claims. When I work with a client, I say, you're going to know more than most financial advisors by the time we go through our process, because if something happened to me, I want to know that you're better off for having gone through this process, and you didn't just trust me blindly to help you because a lot of people said I did a good job with it, right? So I think education's the key. Empower. It goes back to the teach a man to fish thing, so to speak, right?
100%, 100%. There's that adage is something I probably say 10 times a week. I'm not here to do this for you. I am here to teach you how to fish and feed yourself, or, take care of yourself, know what to do in every situation, prepare you, and that's really a huge goal of my show and why I want to do these things. So Beau, you and I know that we can probably tackle 800 topics as they relate to finances and health. But I think this is a great place to kind of wrap it up for today, because people are getting to know you and appreciate your perspective, which is, I love it. Just again, if you haven't noticed Beau's heart for people, he puts them first. And I love that. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the show, was because I just know your integrity. I know your heart. And that's just an extension of what I really want to do here. So I'm going to stop our conversation right now and know that we're going to pick it up again, because we're going to tackle more topics. And Beau and I actually have some plans to do some things off the show together to bring people some more tools, like we were talking about, resources to help educate and empower people to move past their roadblocks. Right, Beau?
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to that collaboration. And listeners, I just say, let Annie know, what are the things you most would want to know more about? Is it that financial foundations? Is it how to communicate with my significant other about money? Let her know. And I know Annie, and she will help bring you the resources and tools to bring that in. And I'll do anything I can to support that too.
And you know what I'll do, and I find this very, very helpful, because not everybody necessarily wants to put their comments or questions in a public forum. So what I'll do in the show notes at boldbravesassyshow.com is I will put in a little short survey where you can privately put your questions, that we can put them all together and actually turn around and answer those questions together. And I find that, it's much more safe for people to be very open and honest, and people trust me. What can I say? I hold confidences very close and very tightly. And so I want to be able to do that for you. So if you're listening to the show and you want to participate in, creating something that Beau and I put together to serve you and your particular needs, then the survey link will be in the show notes, and definitely go in there and share and, tell other people about it. So Beau, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute delight. The first guy ever the guy who stepped up to be bold, brave, and sassy.
Hey, I love it. And I really enjoyed being here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening in to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. My name is Annie Berryhill, your host, and I hope that you are subscribed to the show on iTunes and all the other fancy schmancy listening apps out there. And if you have the time and you like the show, please leave a review. And like I said, subscribe and download, share with your friends. Really want to get the word out about empowering others to live the unapologetic, confident life that God designed for you. So this is Annie Berryhill signing off, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.